Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nishant, and welcome to another episode of the Nishant Garg Show. This show is for people who want to live a fulfilled life through mindfulness practices and personal transformation. My job on this show is to invite world class performers to share the practices to live a fulfilled life. This episode guest is Elsewine, and in this episode, she is going to share proven tips on gaining confidence in public speaking. Elsewine is from the Netherlands and she is a confidence trainer and kinesiologist. She works with people who want to overcome their deep-rooted fear of public speaking, networking, pitching, speaking up in meetings or in front of the camera, as well as with seasoned speakers who want to level up their game. And now, let the episode begin. Elsewine, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You help technology CEOs handle difficult conversations and challenging presentations with confidence and charisma.
That's correct.
How did it happen?
Well, that's been quite a story, actually. So very many years ago, I was a student, and in front of a group of people, I suddenly blacked out. I had to stand up in front of the classroom. There were about 90 people there, and I had to find something out and get back to class and stand up in front of them and say what I had found out. And just at that second, when everybody was looking at me, all those eyeballs, I don't know if people can relate to that, something happened and my brain disconnected, and I just, up until today, I don't know what I have said up there. So it was for me the first element of, speaking to other people, but so uncomfortable that I was avoiding the situation as of then because it was so unpleasant. I don't know if you can relate to that or if you speak easily to big groups. But that was for me really a big thing to get out there and to do that. And I was like, hey, I have to do something about this because this is not very practical when I either freeze up or avoid the situation of speaking to groups. So I joined a debating club, which honed my skill. I don't know, debating, if you know debating, it's a sport where you get a motion and you're either proposition or opposition. So no matter what your own opinion, you have to really give a speech and convince the jury and speak to others in smaller groups first. And this helped me with my first hurdle, but I still felt inside really insecure. And after a few years, I've been training in a different topic on stress management and vitality. I've been training groups and I did it. There were never 90 people, but there were the groups. So I was doing it and everybody said, you're such a good trainer. You know how to explain difficult things very easily. But inside and beforehand, I was still, before the training, I had trouble sleeping. Going up there, I was like sweating and uncomfortable. And once I stood there, it was okay, but still not really comfortable. And then came the point that I thought I want to also create a video training on vitality and stress management because companies were less and less investing at the time. It was during the sort of recession time. So the vitality of employees was not the first thing people were investing in. So I thought, well, let's go online. So I borrowed a tripod, put up the camera, and I walked out of the room. I was so scared. Actually, the feeling that I had in front of those 90 pairs of eyes was back again. So this big lens was staring at me and it felt the same. So I avoided the situation and I walked out of the room. And again, I thought, well, that's not very practical. I want to do something about it. And that led me to doing a training called Feminine Presence, which changed everything for me and which is the fundamentals of the work that I do now. So that's about 8 years ago. And having experienced all this myself first, avoiding difficult conversations or having to give presentations, and then videos, I also found a difficult way to give a presentation. And it shifted all around for me. So there were really practical tools getting you be more yourself, get out of your head, influence basically your body, mind, and energy when you speak to others, whether that's a one-to-one conversation or on camera or a smaller group or bigger group. And when I worked with that, finally then I found beforehand I could really, of course you have like this little excitement that you have before going on stage, but it wasn't overwhelming anymore. And it wasn't taking over or getting a hold of me, if you know what I mean. Like,
and it came from your feminine training, if I'm saying correct.
Yeah, that is from what's called the feminine presence training. So it was for women, and this changed, all these practical tools changed so much for me working with these. And then the trainer said she was educating people to become a licensed trainer in this work. And funnily enough, after doing this training and becoming a certified trainer, integrating then with my background of debating and speech therapy, the thing I studied, it sort of all came together. And I started actually working with men, and actually more with men than with women. But I work with both men and women. So I started.
Why more men?
Yeah. It's just the people I think that come on my path. And I took away the word feminine from it, because my very first group, a friend of mine said, "Oh, you told me so many good things about it. And our mutual friend who did your training was really excited. Why won't we do with 5 people? I will find 5 men and we will come do your feminine presence training." But that sort of felt a little bit odd, because it's not about training men in feminine presence, but the essence is about helping you be more yourself and feel comfortable, even when the situation might be triggering for you. You have practical tools to be yourself. And for men, they want to be more themselves too, which is mostly not feminine. And when it is, that's fine, but it's not generally so. So that's why I shifted it into confidence training, because that is, in essence, what it comes down to.
From feminine presence training to confidence training, and training most of the men, do you think men need more confidence than women in public speaking or in general?
I don't know. I think it differs from person to person. I think men, maybe, that's a good question to say. They won't maybe say openly, like, I need help with this, but inside they could still really feel they could use some extra support or help with the topic. What you see a lot as well is when someone gets promoted. For example, they were fine speaking to a group when they were a junior or at the beginning, but suddenly when expectations shift, or they think expectations shift now that they are the CEO or the senior manager, some people call it imposter syndrome. It doesn't always have to be that, I think. But it's very different to go out to a conference and speak as an employee of the company or as the CEO of the company. At least that is how many people perceive it, which then can lead them to sort of really want to perform well, which can lead to using mannerisms or tricks or tips, which takes them further away from who they actually are. So, and that is, I think that is the most powerful thing.
And that is so true, actually, because when we get promoted in our job, or in any industry we are working in, we have this imposter syndrome or performance anxiety, and we create all these inbuilt expectations that we have
Hmm.
to be in a certain way, or we want to project ourselves in a certain way, how people are going to perceive us. So we think of in a different way rather than how can I be myself? How can I be authentic to myself and present in a way that is comfortable to myself and still bringing the value out of this conversation and helping people and serving people rather than what and how they are going to judge and perceive me. And this is very common, and I've gone through that, and still this happens on and off.
Yeah, of course. So many people have this, but not many people speak about it. But that is really totally agree with what you say there. It's the expectations that you think other people have or you have yourself. And maybe there's a colleague who does this a certain way, or he is already promoted, and it can be tricky to want to be like them. And then when you try, it actually backfires because that is not you. And I've seen over and over again, and I've worked with many different people. Actually, I got also like lawyers and some of the debaters that I met during the debating time, and speaker trainers even, that are good at speaking, but it can also be a learned way to do things, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And with this, it really brings in your authenticity and your personality more, a little bit of vulnerability as well. And that is always so beautiful to see with everyone that I work with. I always love seeing the shift and the change, because it also affects how you impact your audience, whether that is one person or a full room, that doesn't matter. The one that you speak to, yeah, can you speak like yourself? And that is what people, yeah, really resonate with.
What challenges do you see while working with men and women that they are not able to being themselves in
What
speaking?
challenges I see? Um, I think the most common denominator is that people are too much in their head, overthinking. Um, there's sort of this head bubble. You all of our attention is in our head, and when it is there, we sort of disconnect from the moment, from other people. We're just so stuck in our head. When you give a presentation and you're constantly busy with, did I say everything? Did I forget something? Why is this person looking at me like this? Do they think I'm stupid? Then that is the challenge, I think, to sort of let go and really sort of that is what the exercises that I work with are aimed at. And what I love is that it's very practical. So we stop thinking and we start doing, basically, and shift the attention from the head to downstairs. So what we do usually is go to this, what I call the center of your body. It's called Danchen, Ki, Hara. It has different names, but it's sort of the middle point in your body. And
Is it a chakra, some sort of chakra, if you are aware of that?
yeah, I think it is in between chakras. I'm not really an expert on chakras, but I would say it is between the first and the second. So the location is about 3 inch or 7 centimeters below the navel and inside of the body. So in the middle of the body, and it sounds almost incredible, but when you shift your attention from this head bubble, from this place where you are overthinking and everything goes on and growing bigger and bigger and scarier or what have you, and you bring your attention, the only thing you do is shift your attention to that place, that center, 7 centimeters below your navel and then in the middle of your body. and you just focus on that point, so much shifts. So that is one of the things that we work on. Of course, there's much more, but already with that as a start, you can overcome the challenge of overthinking and just being and saying what is,
So focusing on that center in your body, and is it a conscious practice?
I think at the beginning, I often compare the training that I do with learning new muscles or a new skill. So when you do it once, it won't have much of an effect. And in the beginning, you consciously have to train that muscle, go with your attention to that place. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And the more it becomes a habit, if that makes sense. So
Absolutely. So if somebody is going for a presentation or any public speaking, and if you're feeling too much in your head, overthinking, over analyzing how it is going to come up, and this is a great practice to focus on your body center. And this is one of the mindfulness practices where you are coming out of your head and focusing on heart or body center, so that you can feel different and being in the moment, being in the present moment.
Exactly. So I like to also take my breathing with that. So deeper breaths, and I like to stand up if possible. So usually after almost 8 years now, I'm pretty much in my center a lot of the time, though there are things that trigger me to go back into my head, of course. And for big presentations or when I record a video or what have you, I then also more consciously still bring my attention down to my center to really sort of affirm of being there. And so before you go speak or before you have a difficult conversation, it is one tiny thing, of course, that you can relatively easily do, but it's not always easy to stay there, especially in the beginning. It takes some training to do, and it's really nice to see the difference. I remember that was a lady. She was an alderman, I think you call it, working at the city council, and she had this talk that she used to give, and she said, I just give my talk, but meanwhile in my head I'm making grocery lists. Nobody notices. And I said, yeah, they do. So she was speaking and it was all right. She was a okay speaker. And then we did this practice. It was the very first thing we did. So she took her attention down. First of all, she was really present in the moment. She didn't make a grocery list at the same time. She really connected with her audience, and the main message was sort of the same, but she used some different words. It was more personal, and it landed so much better with the audience. It was so beautiful to see, and that is what I meant before. Even good or experienced speakers sometimes sort of speak on routine, and whether they make grocery list or think about a holiday or whatever, what they do, they sort of feel like, I've got this, and they're sort of entertaining and good, and people can even be in the audience and say like, wow. And right when they walk out of the room and you ask them, how was it? It was amazing. What did they talk about? It felt really inspiring, and they already forgot. So it makes really a difference when you want your message to land with the people that you speak to.
And when we are adding authenticity and who we really are, then it connects with people. And I think a lot of people have great skills in technology sector or different sectors, but speaking, communicating over ideas in a easy to understand way is always a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And we cannot control the outcome. We can be the best we can be, and some people will like it and some may not like it.
Yeah, of course. And that's fine, but that's always the case. Also, when you go to mannerisms or performance or using some tricks. And I think more people will not resonate with you or maybe not like you than when you are really yourself. But, nobody is for everyone, but the right people will resonate so much more when you are really yourself and share that. So that's, I think that's really powerful. And I see that again and again when I work one-to-one with people, or I work usually in small groups to give a lot of speaking and stage time and see with each other the changes that are happening. And it's always giving me goosebumps.
I would like to share one incident from my personal life. A few weeks ago, I was about to present a demo to a group of 10 people in my company, and I was super confident about it. I had prepared well, everything was fine. I knew the topic, I knew what I was going to present. I opened my laptop, and suddenly things stopped working. The presentation stopped working, and it was due to technical glitches. And my boss wasn't happy with that. He told me I should have prepared more before coming to this presentation. I asked myself, I was prepared 2 minutes before this presentation, everything was fine. But when I connected my laptop to the main big monitor in the meeting room, things happened and he wasn't happy. Then those self-doubts started coming in. Am I not good enough? What could I have done better? Then with all these personal development tricks and tools, I was telling myself, I cannot control the outcome. I was happy. I did what I could. And next time, I would double make sure that things are fine. And in public speaking, in any conference or in any presentation, things might go wrong because of technical issues, or anything can happen, or there is so much distraction sometimes.
Yeah, let me tell you, I think it's safe to say that you can expect things to go wrong, not out of a doom scenario, but with all the things and technical and like the wires, the internet, matching cables, there's almost always something that goes wrong. And when you already prepare yourself a bit for that, also people who maybe are not so experienced as yourself in having the tools to sort of make it less big in your head. Some people can really be thrown off when the boss says, I'm not happy how you did this. Continue with your talk. Some people will just fall apart.
Because everybody is coming with some expectation, and it's impossible to meet everybody's expectation.
Definitely. And when you know that most likely something will go wrong, either with the presentation, or there are not enough chairs, or there's this, or there's sun coming in and the blinds don't work, and everybody is staring, cannot see the presentation, or what have you. So many things. Just prepare, something unexpected might happen, and we will deal with it in the best way. That also helps to not be sort of, getting into this place of fear and self-doubt for, like you said, you couldn't have prevented this. Everything worked fine just before. Sometimes it happens.
And public speaking is the number one fear in the world.
Yes.
I would like to ask you, what other practices would you suggest and recommend to our listeners so that they can apply those practices and we take one step forward in their communication, presentation / public speaking, if they want to be a public speaker? And adding one more thing over here, public speaking doesn't mean that you have to be a public speaker or a motivational speaker. Even if you are speaking with 4 or 5 members in your group, that is a public speaking.
Yeah, or a presentation at work, or just give something to it. Yeah. So I think it's really, really good to take the time and keep training yourself to focus on that point and practice speaking from there, also by yourself or maybe in front of the mirror. Because very often when suddenly someone sits across you from the room, you are right back in your head bubble because you're overthinking or like, oh, did he mean I said something wrong? And it only have to be something little like that and you're right up there. So the first thing is to be aware yourself. Are you in your head or are you in your center? And just almost like a secretary taking notes, no judgments added to it. When you are in your head, just go back down and don't say, why am I in my head again? Or why isn't it working? Because that keeps you right up there. So be aware of where you are and really train yourself a lot of going to this center point. That is really going to make a lot of difference. And another thing I like to say is eye contact, is to train yourself and to make eye contact with your listeners. And I've worked with quite some experienced speakers who speak on stage a lot, and they sort of quickly look everybody in the eye, but it's more sort of a scanning, so there's no real connection. Whereas you can make more of a conversation with people, and you don't have to sort of stare them down, of course. That wouldn't be very nice. But so many people say like, oh, when you feel uncomfortable, just look over their head or look at the point behind them. They won't notice. Well, let me tell you, they do. So just train yourself in making eye contact and maintaining that for a while. Maybe don't start counting numbers because then it distracts you from what you say. But let's say about 20 seconds maybe before you shift your attention to somebody else. That way it's a more personal connection with the listeners.
I would like to ask you this question. If you have a presentation tomorrow or any speech tomorrow, up to what point or what time before you would stop your preparation? Overnight or a few hours before, if that makes sense.
Ooh, that is a question I think that doesn't have one single answer. It really depends on where is this presentation? Is this just in a meeting at work, or is this for important clients? Do you know the topic very well, or is this the first time you give this topic? So I think it's really important to know what you're going to say without memorizing it. But when you are an expert on the field, be really clear on the points that you want to say and write down like in bullet points, I want to cover this and this and this. And you can practice out loud a few times how it comes out. But it doesn't have to be memorized word for word. And that is what I find the power of speaking from the center, where you have your attention there. The right words come out. But it's, of course, if this is the first time that you speak about this topic and it's in front of really important clients, practice as much as you can. I practice sometimes under the shower or in the car when there's something new. I practice out loud a few times. But when it's somewhere that I know the topic inside out, I've done it a lot, I might practice less. I do more of the exercises of the presence, of being really present and grounded. And
what are those practices to incorporate more presence and grounded?
Well, I've shared one with you here that is going to the center. It's very hard to just do all the others in a podcast, actually. But when listeners are interested, it's actually also one of the books that I brought with me. My mentor and the trainer of this method wrote a book called Powerful and Feminine. And again, I think it's also very interesting for men, where she explains more of these practices. So that could be interesting to check out. It's really hard to sort of put a training that I do in a day with people where we cover like 5 or 6 of these into a podcast like this. And it's also good not to overwhelm people, because when you have too much, at least I am like that, when I get like 4 or 5 things, I'm like, oh, this is also good. And then actually I do none of them. Whereas I think people can make a really big change when they start now with this center practice and really work with that, with the eye contact, and really practicing. And it will come out different every time, but it's good to practice out loud
And these two
and
are
see
the
how it.
major practices I would suggest. And I would say that because eye contact takes a lot of confidence. I see this many, many times. People in the small groups, they don't even make eye contacts. If you're speaking to them, they might be looking here and there. I used to be one of them. And then I started practicing eye contact because when you make eye contact, you are giving your gift of presence to somebody. You are telling them unconsciously that I care about this
Mhm.
conversation. And
Exactly.
and I believe that not making an eye contact is coming from lack of self-esteem, that you may not believe in yourself. It's not generalizing, but from different books, I would say that having lack of self-esteem, that you do not believe in yourself, you feel that something is not good in yourself, that is why you're not making eye contact. And once we start developing that habit over time, looking into looking into somebody's eyes, then your overall confidence will increase. And I have done it many, many times in the last 3 or 4 years, and I've seen great results in my personal and professional life. Eye contact makes a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. And that also is something to, like you say, that it's not something that you think, I need to make eye contact, and then you do it from then on. It's something that develops as well, and you have to pay attention to. And I know it can also be insecurity to speak to groups. That was it for me. So I was really confident about my topic and I knew what I was going to say, but I was just so scared to stand in front of the group and have people looking at me that sort of the disconnect was there. And therefore, I also could not look people in the eye. So for me, it wasn't self-esteem, but more scared of the group or of the eyes staring at me. But it can be perceived that way for sure, that people think, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or why are you looking away? So yeah, I agree with you. So I think if people start with going to the center and making eye contact, and training them in that, doing only those two things, it will be making a lot of difference.
And making an eye contact in a big group may not be possible, I think, all the time. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. What you do then is you just choose one person and you make eye contact with them, and it's just like, because you really make eye contact, and that is what I said before, people who speak to bigger groups often say they make eye contact, but they sort of scan the room, like sliding over all the eyes all the time. Whereas when you really take, like I said, 20-30 seconds, or maybe during one topic or piece of the topic that you describe, and you look someone in the eye as if you are the only two people there, the people sitting around that feel really part of this sort of quote unquote
This
conversation.
is
Of course,
this
the
is a
people.
profound practice, and I can say that with that, it is more of a mindfulness practice. You are focusing on one thing slash one person at a time, not
Mhm.
letting your mind wander all over the place. And this one statement I heard from the teachings of Dr. Wayne Dyer. He used to be the spiritual guru. He mentioned that in public speaking or in any kind of speaking, you remind yourself that you are there in that situation to serve. You are not there for yourself, you are there for others. When you
Mhm.
go in that situation from a mindset of serving, then the whole game shift. And I practice that, I remind that, and it really helps me. And when I do that, when I remind myself with that, then I come out of my head, I come out of my body, and I feel I'm there to serve others. It's not about me, it's about for them. Then in that case,
Exactly.
I shift from how I'm speaking. Am I speaking with an accent? Am I speaking like this or like that? And how it looks like, and how I'm going to feel in a recording. So, all those questions, when we practice letting go of all that inner chatter, then our presentation and the conversation will have so many beautiful colors. Long answer.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, I love how you say the inner chatter, because for me, I noticed, and we notice this all the time in the groups as well, when you shift your attention to your center, this inner chatter gets less, or you don't even hear this inner chatter. So it might be there, but you don't, it's sort of like you go underwater and you don't hear it anymore so clearly. And one other thing just now came up with what you said now. Actually, when you speak on stage and there's a big audience, and you speak to one person in a topic, and then you go to maybe to the right of the room, or a few people to the side, and the people around it feel part of the conversation as well, so they feel addressed even though you don't look at them. But when you still find it scary, it can really be a mindset shift to think about you are only speaking to one person. And of course, you are not, because there are maybe 120 people in that room. But everybody that is sitting there is just one person, and they are listening. So, of course, it's a sort of accumulation of one person people, but your message doesn't land sort of in a group or like this thing. Everybody who sits there is just one person, and they are listening. And I loved that concept as well, to make it less scary to speak to the big group.
This is interesting. So, if you are in a big crowd or in a big group, I should say, visualizing that there is only one person sitting in front of you.
Yeah, because everyone is just one person, and only they listen as one person to you, and there are people sitting next to them.
It is
That's
more of
okay.
telling your mind or fooling your mind, because mind doesn't know the reality, right?
mm, yeah, I don't know if it's fooling. um, for me it's maybe understand, or sort of resonating or understanding that, yeah, that everybody is one person, so they don't feel like a group, even though I see them as a big audience sitting there. They just sit there as one person. So I don't know if it's fooling. Yeah, well, whatever word maybe resonates with people, but yeah, that really helps me as well, this understanding.
Well, Elsarina, this has been an amazing conversation so far. And before we end up this conversation, do you have any specific practice for our listeners to take away from this conversation? I know you have already suggested a couple of those, but any favorite practice of yours that you would like to share
A practice, you mean to do
in your
um,
speaking?
in speaking? Yeah, I'm sorry to be repeating myself, but the power of the center practice, that shifted everything for me. So that is my favorite, and maybe in combination with um, setting a bubble around myself. So I am really in my own energy. Those are the two things I do most. So I drop down into my center, as I call it, and then I imagine sort of a bubble around me, which is filled with my own energy. So it's really comfortable to stand there and not let anything else come close. And but it's I even use the center practice when I go running. when I go like, oh, it's far, or I'm tired, or this hurts or that, mental chatter, overthinking, I go back to my center and suddenly it's not so bad. So it's really, it's my favorite.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. And I would say this is my last question to you is any favorite book that comes to your mind that can inspire people in their overall personality?
Yeah, I am a really big fan of The Compound Effect. I don't know if you've read that.
I love that. Darren Hardy.
Yeah, Darren Hardy. And it is applicable for business and life. And his approach is basically when you make only a little change and do it consistently over time, it has a big effect. That's what I said before, like rather than giving 10 practices to people, it's good to have one or two things and really start with that and actually implement it and do it. And whether it's stop, if you want to, whatever behavioral change you want to do or goal you want to set, take a little step into the right direction and consistently do it. And it compounds to like a big result. And it's one of my favorites. I want to read it again soon because it's really powerful.
Thank you so much, Elsewine. It has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I thought so as well. Thank you for inviting me and having me.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode today. I hope you learned from this episode that you can apply in your life. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe to the podcast, The Nishant Garg Show, on Apple Podcast. You can also subscribe to the show through my website, https://nishantgarg.me, NISHANTGARG.me. You can also share this podcast with your family and friends or whoever want to feel fulfilled. And thank you so much again.